Lights out. Oh, wait a minute, here comes Dad. Here comes Dad. This is
Know where
a
that
family class,
milestone
right?
is?
Come on, Dad, we're waiting for you, so you turn lights out.
Portland Bill?
That's right. My father, Don Walls.
Is that where it is, Walter? 50, huh?
Yeah.
The Hyde Park Stone Wall Committee, in conjunction with Unique New York and the New York State Preservation League, presents the story of the stone walls of Hyde Park. Ring.
Must be for one of you.
No, I think you have the wrong extension. You reached Seminar D in the library, 195. No, he's not. This is Roman Iron. I have a class in here. You're welcome.
Father Lamort here.
Their history, construction, the people who built them 100 years ago, and the people who are rebuilding and preserving these sculptures in stone today. Good fences make good neighbors. These words were probably in the minds of the early landowners and farmers of Hyde Park 200 years ago, when the first farmer or Indian moved and put into place the first stone to clear his field for, I'm about 3 slides behind. Yeah? To clear his fields for his cows or crops. And when the early Dutch settler began to mark off with stone his vast land holdings, taking pride in his land and using stone to create boundaries of lasting beauty. Stone walls of the type found in Hyde Park are completely unknown in the West, but are a prime feature of the Dutchess County, New York, and New England landscape. Much of the stone used for building walls and dwellings in Hyde Park was native field and cut bluestone. Some of them had to be imported by barge down the river from Kingston. Walls that were built to clear fields were a matter of removing natural slate and glacier-produced stone that abounds in this part of Dutchess County. Two of the basic methods used to construct farm walls were placing 1 stone on 2 and placing 3 stones on 1. Old walls in Hyde Park generally followed the contour of the land, and thus became, through the natural process of shifting and aging, growth of mosses and lichen structures that are organically pleasing to the eye and natural barriers against erosion, and a refuge for animal and plant life. Stone walls, as an integral part of early Hyde Park life, reflected both the talents of their builders and the lifestyles found in the community. Early stone wall builders must be thought of as craftsmen who took a real pride in the construction of walls, which were as individual as the needs for different types of walls. Along the Albany Post Road, both estate and modest income families used their walls not only as property markers, but also as a place to sit for the family portrait. A meeting spot for courting couples, and perhaps as markers for the start and finish for the town bicycle race. In 1900, the Hyde Park blacksmith shop was witnessing the beginning of the end of an era in transportation. The Albany Post Road through Hyde Park, north to Albany and south to New York City, was still a hard dirt thoroughfare for horse, carriage, and cart in 1900. Stone walls lined the road through the hamlet, and there were numerous inns and churches along the route for the tired traveler. Two fine pre-revolutionary stone houses fronted by walls along Route 9 in Hyde Park. One is the Jacobus Stoutenburg home, son of the first white settler in Hyde Park in 1742. The Thatcher house no longer stands, but some walls still remain. Do you remember where this house is? Or was? It's near the Town and Country Diner on 9, just a little bit further north.
Van Dam Road.
Van Dam Road, yes. And that was taken down for a Burger King. The bridge along the Crum Elbow Creek on Albany Post Road was of wooden construction over stone until 1900, when it was destroyed by fire. The new bridge of stone was built with a gift of $18,000 from Frederick W. Vanderbilt and begun around 1920. This bridge is still very much in use along Route 9 today and is a fine example of craftsmanship in both bridge building and stonework. You know where that is? Just below the entrance to the Vanderbilt estate as you go down that dip
Down
in the
dip
road.
and you start
Yes.
to go, oh.
Early 19th century barns of wood siding and sometimes slate roofed were complements to the natural stone used in the walls surrounding the fields and roadbeds of the farmers' holdings. In some cases, rural stone walls were supplemented in wooden rails, and later barbed wire barriers were added across the top to keep stock in the fields. Let us imagine here, as Robert Frost did in his poem Mending Wall, two farmers talking about the reason for building a wall. He is all pine and I am apple orchard. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out. Through the years, many wealthy families purchased land along the Hudson River, building large estates surrounded by stone fences. The James Roosevelts, shown here on horseback on the lawn with young Franklin and his mother Sarah, rebuilt their house on the site of a previous home, landscaping great fields with rows of trees and iron gates. The Morgan estate and walls with stone gates is north of the Roosevelt estate on Route 9. Mary Newbold Morgan took great pride in keeping her stone walls in good repair. The walls of the Morgan estate were repaired in 1965 by Harvey and Richard Maston Hyde Park Masons. The walls were topped with stone set in concrete. The Rogers family, shown here in front of their mansion, which is, the Amard Seminary now, further north on the Post Road, built their walls of veneer bluestone on the face. Behind the roadway, the walls are constructed of random fieldstone patterns. The walls facing the road are mortared and topped with large, beautifully cut capstones. These families, as well as the Frederick Vanderbilts, this is me, following the precedent set by the Jacobus Stoutenburgs, were community-minded, and their wall-building efforts show concern for marking property with architectural achievement in the art of wall building. The Albany Post Road, begun in 1703 and up until the time of the American Revolution known as the King's Highway, was once the major route between New York and Albany for post riders and travelers. In March 1797, a highway resolution was passed providing for the placement of stone milestones. More than 40 stone markers were erected at this time. The estate families were responsible for the placing of many of the still existing milestone markers along the walls, most of which stand today between Poughkeepsie and the Columbia County line. The markers that remain were saved due to the efforts of the Dutchess County Historical Society, of which Franklin D. Roosevelt was a member, who in 1935 helped to have them reset in concrete and laid up fieldstone around them, as the markers were made of sandstone and were rapidly disintegrating. One marker south of Watson Place is in the stone wall on the west side of the road. It reads,
Where's that one?
this one is directly across from Sundance Sports now, if you go into Hyde Park. It's on the left-hand side and is part of the Rogers Wall, the old Rogers Wall. It reads 87 miles to New York, 5 miles to Poughkeepsie. Just north of the Vanderbilt estate, near the entrance to Shagaback, this marker is now covered over so you really can't see it, but it reads 89 miles to New York. A little further north, near the Dominican camp entrance, another marker reads 90 miles to New York. We will now travel the route taken by 6 generations of Hyde Park families: farmers, merchants, estate owners, and travelers from Albany to New York and back. A road through Hyde Park, edged by signatures in stone. The walls as they exist today, some standing as they were built, and others falling prey to a changing environment. Entering Hyde Park on the Albany Post Road from the south, the walls bordering the Roosevelt estate gradually give way to walls on the Morgan and Rogers and Vanderbilt estates, fronting recently built homes of the village. On the east side of the Post Road, walls are beginning to show signs of disrepair. Forsythia and White Pine once crowded over the lazy contours of the walls bordering the Thatcher home, which was demolished in 1972 to make way for a proposed fast food restaurant. Today, though the leaves are green with another summer, the wall and the land at this site show the ravages of time and a thing called progress. Soon even this remnant will be gone, and it is now. The walls bordering the Stoutenburg house remain the same today as when the house was built, except for small areas of tumbling stone, and areas such as these are cause for our concern. Since this slide presentation was made, that building has been changed into a dress shop, the Green Frog, and it's a wonderful adaptive use, a modern adaptive use of an old building, and we're delighted to see that.
And then they also fix Friday, right?
Yes. The ancestors of the first family of settlers of Hyde Park were protected and watched over by a well-constructed stone-walled cemetery, entered by a bronze gate with the S initial for Jacobus Stoutenburg. Vandals have left their mark here too. The stonework in the walls is missing most of the cut capstone. Where 2 lines of the wall come together, it is interesting to note the use of large overlapped stone gradually diminishing to smaller interlocking stones in the center. Moving north along the road, we come to a focal point of stone wall building in the town of Hyde Park, the estate walls of the Frederick W. Vanderbilt Mansion. The present mansion was under construction from May 1895 to March 1899 on the site of the old Langdon House, built in 1847. This photograph by James Pearsall, an early Hyde Park photographer, shows the entrance to the Vanderbilt estate property prior to the construction of the stone walls along Route 9. While the mansion was being built, the estate grounds were also being bridged, as one can see here today by a visit to the grounds. It was decided to try and leave the surroundings as natural as possible. Most rock ledges and trees were left, and the streams winding through the grounds were bridged. In March 1898, a contract was awarded to build stone gatehouses, and these, plus the stone walls and gates, were completed by the end of that year. About 1905, additional grounds were added to the estate, and the north gate and stone walls were added between 1906 and 1908. John Carter, a longtime resident of Hyde Park who helped build the Vanderbilt walls, tells us that the bluestone used in the walls was brought from quarries in Kingston to what is now Bard Rock below the Vanderbilt estate on the river. The stone was then loaded onto the horse-drawn wagons and hauled to the Albany Post Road site where it was chipped and fitted into place. Isn't that a great slide?
Are the local people who are?
Yes.
Who are they?
You see the big stout man on the left, Ava?
Yes, yes.
Well, that was Mr. Myers, who lived in that yellow house where Deold has her office now.
Oh, yes, yes.
And he apparently was a marvelous mason and did a lot of work in the community. And the young man who is just to his left is John Carter, who gave us this slide.
You say they were built in 1905?
Well, the
1906?
gates,
The gates.
yes,
South of the north gate.
right,
The other gate was earlier.
right,
1896,
Right.
right?
mm-hmm.
And it's blue.
Cut bluestone.
Cut bluestone.
But the back of it will be just old fieldstone, but they use the cut stone for a face. And see, those walls were much higher at that time, but as 9 has been expanded and built up,
Yeah.
it covers a lower portion of the walls.
Where's the quarry for that bluestone?
In Kingston.
Oh, in nothing over on this side?
No.
No.
The cut bluestone used in these walls came from pieces of stone left over from cuttings of sidewalls and buildings ordered for other areas. Since the Vanderbilt walls were not all built at once, this probably accounts for the difference in stonework in various sections of the walls, within and along the estate boundaries. The walls vary in structure even between the short distance from Bard Park entrance to across the road from St. James Church. The present wall has at its core the old fieldstone laid in cement and cut stone as a face. Note the can you see those heart-like marks in the middle? Well, we like to think that they were marks left there by local masons who might have been called the Hart brothers, because apparently it was the custom for some masons to leave a particular mark in whatever they were working at. And we were really pleased when we saw that mark in the slides. I think it's neat. The walls along the Vanderbilt mansion and Route 9 also were topped with a wrought iron fencing of the type shown here prior to World War II, when the iron was removed for the war effort. So if you were to walk along and look at the tops, you'll see little marks like that. The walls adjoining the stone and wood gate to the Vanderbilt farm and stables, now the site of the Hyde Park Playhouse, are a good example of mortared, varied colored stone capped with cut bluestones. These gates, by the way, have been removed since that slide was taken also. Now that we have seen some of our walls, we must begin that task of mending wall. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down, sends the frozen groundswell under it, and makes gaps even two can walk abreast. The gaps, no one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time, we might find them there. Man, machine, vandalism along the Albany Post Road are the prime culprits. Removal of capstones by people result in these broken surfaces. The heavy steel treads of machinery and debris left behind after construction result in breaking the backs of some 200-year-old walls. The stone walls of Hyde Park remind us of our obligation to preserve our heritage in stone for future generations. The Hyde Park Stonewall Committee is now beginning the process of having broken and vandalized walls repaired, continuing the tradition of wall building in our town. We present this slide program so that you become aware of the beauty and importance of these walls. Let us continue the task of mending wall, of neighbors meeting at spring mending time. And on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us as we go. To each the boulders that have fallen to each, and some are loaves, and some so nearly balls we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it isn't elves exactly. I see him there, bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors. Stone walls.
Where was this taken?
This is a marvelous stone wall that is behind Stewart's, and where apartments have been now built all along the stream. And there was a gentleman there who all of his life would clear the stream of fieldstone and built these walls all along the bank. And they're really just beautiful. Some of them have been broken down during the construction time, but they're just lovely.
And I see across from Barker's, and they have
Yeah.
the stone walls being repaired.
Let me tell you a little bit about that, because I think it's interesting. And originally, this project was started with a $1,500 grant. And some mortared walls along the Rogers estate were initially repaired, and we made this slide presentation. And I got that as an original grant. That was New York State Preservation League, and it was like a dream come true, because they advertised and you could just submit a thing, and it was very lucky. Then the Stonewall Committee has become a part of Hyde Park Visual Environment Committee, and last year we received a grant of $5,000 from the Gannett Foundation. And it's taken a long time to try and find somebody who would be willing to work for less than $18 an hour, for example, which is what Masons, I told you, are charging now. And we have 3 young men who are learning the art of building stone walls, and I think they're doing a fantastic job on those walls.
It's beautiful.
Terry Gee, Joyce Gee's son, is one of the boys who are learning. And so we hope to go perhaps down to the light with this $5,000. We're going to try to do that much. But we're hoping that people will look at the project and want to be supportive and perhaps care to send donations, that kind of thing. And ultimately, because we have so many visitors passing through Hyde Park, we thought we would like to emphasize that corridor. And the stone walls are really an integral part of that whole corridor between Easy Street and the end of Vanderbilt, so that it's something the community could take pride in.
Are you doing a campaign? I mean, have you started?
Oh, great.
You know how people pay so much to run a mile or to read a book? Why not have something to build a foot or an inch
That's good.
or something like that, which wouldn't cost people very much money? But if each one gave, say, $1 for so much,
That's a great idea.
you could do a whole thing, and people could come up and they wouldn't vandalize it maybe either again,
Yeah.
because they own part of the wall.
Yes, that's a super idea. I'll take that back. That's marvelous. Thank you very
If
much.
it'll work, I mean,
Yeah.
you might even have kids standing out in the middle of the Route 9.
Sure.
Going down, buy a piece of the wall, I mean, you know, or a subscription thing, or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Terrific. Okay, well, that's it.
Thank you very much for that.
Interesting.
Appreciate it.
Very good.